joint venture partners signed the final investment decision. Land for the construction of different facilities was acquired and compensation was fully made. Cash and in-kind compensation, like resettlement houses for all families, were built and handed over to the project-affected persons. Construction commenced for different aspects of the project, leading to the development of facilities such as the camps, well pads, the central processing facility, and feeder lines, followed by the delivery of the rigs and installation. Spudding was done in January 2023. There have been promising drilling outcomes, with 7 wells drilled in pads 2 and 3. Drilling operations, coring and on-site works are continuing, achieving total footage of approximately 23,000 meters. Other noticeable activities include a base station and permanent camp, solar turbine transportation, EPC 3-tank erection work, and EPC 4 pipeline trenching. CNOOC will actively promote the LPG integration plan, which will gradually achieve the strategic transformation towards a green and low-carbon energy supplier. A camp integrated hydropower project has been set up, which will result in carbon dioxide emission reduction by 3,156 tons. CNOOC has continued to contribute to the Belt and Road, people-to-people exchanges, enhancing China-Africa friendship and promoting the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. CNOOC collaborates with various Ugandan universities to enhance graduate employment curriculum design and research. We have signed agreements with several institutions to support scientific research and develop talents in the oil and gas sector. CNOOC, in collaboration with 5 other Chinese companies on the Kingfisher project, spearheaded a drive that led to the donation of $500,000 to upgrade the infrastructure of the Entebbe Welfare School. This is the largest donation to education in Uganda.
On behalf of the Ministry of Education and Sport, I would like to extend my gratitude to CNOOC Uganda Limited and the contractors of Kingfisher Oil Fields for your commitment to the cause of vulnerable and challenged children.
CNOOC sponsors international scholarships, sending Ugandan students to study in China. Under this program, a total of 11 students have been sponsored and 8 have since graduated and are currently working in the oil and gas industry.
This scholarship to me is a dream come true. I always wanted to receive a first-class education from a good school, and CNOOC has provided me with this opportunity, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
CNOOC focuses on training and certification programs for skills needed in the oil and gas industry, which promotes local employment and strengthens Uganda's logistics and industrial capacity. Over 150 contractors and more than 3,000 individuals have been trained in various oil and gas skills. The company collaborates with local vocational schools to provide welder training, significantly contributing to Uganda's professional welding sector.
They took the initiative to sponsor us who are underdogs, and they want to put us somewhere. We thank them a lot. There's nothing much we can give them, but maybe use the skills properly so that they can also feel they have done some impact in the Uganda we have now.
CNOOC Youth Employment Support Program has trained over 350 local youths in various vocational skills, improving their employability and living conditions. These trainings cover welding, heavy truck driving, heavy machinery operation, engineering construction, and other skills needed in the oil and gas field development, as well as driving, tailoring, and hairdressing, among others. CNOOC invests in projects to improve community living standards, such as providing clean drinking water to over 13,000 residents in Buhuka flats, carrying out medical camps and building resettlement houses with modern amenities for 56 households. We have also invested $620,000 in maintaining critical roads and enhancing public safety. Livelihood restoration programs include donating livestock and teaching scientific breeding methods. We also work closely with the Confucius Institute of Makerere University, supporting events like the Chinese Bridge Competition and the Sound in My Heart Chinese Song Competition. CNOOC also organizes activities to celebrate Chinese culture, such as the Spring Festival. These efforts enrich cultural communication and foster mutual understanding between China and Uganda.
CNOOC Uganda Limited is committed to education and capacity building to fulfill its vision of energy for Uganda.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend the night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
The Kingfisher oil fields development has evolved, reaching some significant milestones after Sinnock Uganda Limited and its joint venture partners signed the final investment decision. Land for the construction of different facilities was acquired and compensation was fully made. Cash and in-kind compensation, like resettlement houses for all families, were built and handed over to the project-affected persons. Construction commenced for different aspects of the project, leading to the development of facilities such as the camps, well pads, the central processing facility, and feeder lines, followed by the delivery of the rigs and installation. Spudding was done in January 2023. There have been promising drilling outcomes, with 7 wells drilled in pads 2 and 3. Drilling operations, coring and on-site works are continuing, achieving total footage of approximately 23,000 meters. Other noticeable activities include a base station and permanent camp, solar turbine transportation, EPC 3-tank erection work, and EPC 4 pipeline trenching. Sinnock will actively promote the LPG integration plan, which will gradually achieve the strategic transformation towards a green and low-carbon energy supplier. A camp integrated hydropower project has been set up, which will result in carbon dioxide emission reduction by 3,156 tons. Sinnock has continued to contribute to the Belt and Road, people-to-people exchanges, enhancing China-Africa friendship and promoting the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. Sinnock collaborates with various...
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I welcome you to the Sinnock Online Enterprise Development Program, and this is day 5 of our engagement. For those that have been here with us from the day that we started on Monday, I thank you for being good listeners. I thank you for being good students. I thank you for being good learners. From the day we started, we have had quite a number of topics, and we have also had very interesting consultants who have been here trying to train you, lecture you, and inform you about the different dynamics in the different fields. And the purpose, decided to sponsor this engagement was to make sure that you people out there are doing business, and very good business, and you are at least benefiting from the businesses that you are having out there. To remind you just a bit, on Monday we had Mr. Eric who was here, Mr. Eric from Sinnock, the manager national content. He was here telling us briefly about this training. And we also had Mr. Robert Senoga, who was teaching us about taxation, filing returns, and everything that was in line with financial management. Then on our second day, he was still here telling us about business management. And then on Wednesday, we also had someone here, Miss Apio Sarah, who was lecturing us about marketing and sales. Then yesterday, we also had a very interesting engagement with Mr. Meiko Oleke. Mr. Meiko Oleke was also trying to teach us about the business models and human resource. So I'm very sure that some of you out there have been recording, Some of you have been writing down notes, and I assure you that all the content here will always be on Vectra Energy YouTube channel. You can also catch the engagement live on Vectra Energies at X, and you can also follow the engagement live on Facebook. So, ladies and gentlemen, here once again we have a lecturer, a trainer who was here with us last year. For those that attended the sessions of last year, we had Miss Barbara Mwanje, an expert in occupational health and safety. She's also an expert in HSE audit and management, systems professional. And today she will be taking us through a topic of ensuring adherence to health and safety standards. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity to welcome Ms. Barbara Mwanje to the SINOC Online Enterprise Development Program 2025. You are welcome, Ms. Barbara.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you.
So you can say hello to our viewers, and then we can start with our first topic. But you first have to break down for us the topics that we will have, so that the people out there don't miss out on the last topic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning, all the viewers, all our business people. It's very good to be here again, to be with you. And I hope that I can build on further from what we went through at the last time that we had a similar session on health and safety, especially in the oil and gas sector. But we know that the oil and gas sector interfaces with many other sectors. So I will be discussing today mostly. I'll be looking at, just the general area of legislation, of policies, of standards, and the consequences when we do not make sure that we are compliant. What are the consequences? What are the legal consequences? I'd also like to talk about a bit more. Again, all of these, we ran through it as an introduction last time, but this time I want to delve a bit deeper. What happens when you're not compliant? What happens to the community? What happens to the business? What happens to your employees? Health and safety, we might be talking about your business, but as I've said, your business often interacts with the wider community and public. So we want to think more about that in today's session. And also we want to go a bit more into risk assessment. At the last time, I only gave an overview of what a risk assessment covers. This time I want to go a bit deeper and share with you components of a risk assessment and how we come about those components and filling one out. As we proceed, this last year or so has been, we've had a couple of things that have really been very difficult for the public. We've had a lot of public opinions. We've had a lot of public anger. And today I would just like us to, as we go through this session today, let's keep in mind the terrible event that happened at Chitezi some time ago, and in more recent days, what has happened, what happened to Mr. Rupariela's son during a road accident at a construction site. We will be talking about construction site safety and standards, and a few of these things. I feel that it's always good that we're able to look at something. So it won't be really a case study. So I'm just asking that as we go through this session, all of you keep that in mind. Think to yourself, okay, how did that possibly be relevant to the two cases I've brought here? There's also a huge rise in suicides, and we've seen this a lot. And but today we will not go too much into mental health, and hopefully at another session we can do more of that. So with those few words as just beginning, I'd like to just go into the first slide and share with you what this particular session will include in terms of content. Yes, so as always, when you're setting a tone for a presentation or a lecture, you need to go back a little bit. There are some things that we call staples. You cannot begin a training in health and safety without quickly looking at the health and safety principles and the legal framework, health and safety policies. And then, so those were also, we looked at them last time, but as I said, these are staples and they set the tone for any kind of session on occupational health and safety. So I will run those through just to set the tone for the rest of the conversation. We will also, as I've said, understand the most common risks and hazards in our workplaces. And then today, unlike last time, we will look at road safety in a bit more than we did last time. And we'll be looking at the road safety pillars, the decade of action for road safety pillars. There's 5 of them. And then we will be looking at the safe system approach. And again, unlike last time, we will look a bit more into construction site safety. And finally, we will review a risk assessment report and the mitigation strategies thereunder. Thank you very much, and I think we can proceed, Michael.
Yeah, exactly, you can proceed.
Right, so these we already discussed, but just again, a clear understanding of what is health and safety. The term health and safety is generally used to describe occupational health and safety. It relates to prevention of accidents and ill health to employees and those who may be affected by their work. So affected by their work is when we start looking at not just our employees, which is our first duty of care, but we have to look a bit wider than that, and especially in the oil and gas sector, because there's more hazards in that sector than you might find in others. Maybe in the health sector, there are quite a number of hazards, but obviously the oil and gas sector, the hazards in that sector are very high and very the risk is high, and the outcomes are very disastrous if they are not mitigated. We also know that health and safety is about preventing or mitigating any accidents. So it's a description, but what it's about is prevention and or mitigation of accidents or incidents at your workplace that may result in injury by to your employers and others. Again, others is important. It could be people working in the community where you operate. It could be people coming in to visit your place of work. They all fall under, you have a duty of care, you have a responsibility as a business owner. I just wanted to find out, maybe, are they able to type in? What kind of businesses do we have represented here?
I think let's be general, because we have very many businesses and we are not looking at a particular region, we are looking at everyone in business.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, that's true. Health and safety does fall everywhere, so that's okay. So, as you know, we've already discussed that it's important that employees are safe at their working place, but so they don't get injured and they don't get accidents. But there's also a sense of ease in your working conditions. If you're working, even if you've not yet been injured or had an accident, or any of your colleagues having, or employees in this case, having an accident that is fatal or a serious injury, it's even before that, the fact that you know that this can happen puts people at unease, and they're not able to work properly because they're constantly worried about their safety. They're afraid to do the work because they're afraid that I might do this and I might have a problem. I'll give you an example. For example, I had a power outage at my home And I called Umeme. At the time it was still Umeme. And they came in, and the electrician, the technician who came, went and looked at the tree or the electricity pole, and it was slanting, and he literally said he couldn't go up that pole for his own safety. So of course, I'm giving that as an example of work cannot be done if people are afraid that the conditions are not safe for them to work. Some of the benefits that come from effective health and safety throughout your organizations, your companies, are decreased absences among employees, increased work productivity, increased brand image within the wider community. If you have accidents all the time at your workplace that affect your employees, your visitors, your contractors, even your community at times, surely your brand is negatively impacted. Ensuring workers and stakeholders are at ease while at work. Then, of course, there's legal responsibilities which must be met by business owners, by employers such as yourselves, and customers will be happy as they know they are buying from a fair company that stresses humanity, stresses well-being, and cares for their employees, but also for the community. This is a very important thing, and it's not just about being seen to do these things. It's actually doing them to a point that you can measure the impact of your business and your compliance to standards and to safety and to good practice generally. So legal framework, the government has a duty under the Constitution of Uganda to protect citizens. And through a dedicated ministry and various laws and regulations, the government directs and governs the actions of employers, such as yourselves, to ensure a safe and healthy citizenry. So it's not just your employees, it's the citizenry, which includes your employees. So we have labor laws. Last time we went through this slide, but I will delve deeper in the next couple of slides to understand the responsibility of an employee and your duty of care, or your failure, or your what could be called negligence. So we're talking about labor laws, which are listed over there. For example, the Employment Act, Workers' Compensation Act, NSSF Act, Arbitration and Conciliation Act, and the Labor Unions Act. Those are the labor laws. We also have the Occupational Health and Safety Act of 2006. This is under review, and a bill is already ready for a review of this act. So we're waiting on that. It should be coming through very soon. And it is your duty as business owners to get a copy of this act, but also the new one once it is gazetted and passed. So we have Section 3 in this act, which talks about the duty of employer to protect the employee. The duty is heavy. Section 14, the Health and Safety Policy and Statement. Section 15 and 16, Safety Representatives and Committees. Section 19, Adequate and Suitable Personal Protective Equipment. And Section 55 is First Aid. Section 57 and 58, Emergency Fire Response and Equipment. And then we have manual handling, lifts and hoists. I ask again that all these are available online. Please try and get yourselves a copy so that you ensure that you are compliant in the area of health and safety. So we have different types of laws. We have what is called criminal law, which is between the state and persons, and or offenses against a state, and the remedy is usually punishment and penalties. Then we have civil. law, which is between persons. And we're looking there at breach of statutory duty, breach of contract, and the remedy here is damages, compensation for damages. Administratively, what happens is when we talk about administrative remedy, we mean that if something's gone wrong and it's gone as a civil case before the courts, then what happens is there's often a review of what happened and what can we do to improve it. So there could be a creation, a review of policies, a creation of new policies and operations. And this is usually done through the administrative agencies, and they would be looking at policies, the procedures, the rules, regulations. Where was the gap? Was it a failure to implement, or was it just pure negligence? So the gaps are looked at that allowed such an event to happen, and often new things are done to change, whether it's to include new laws and regulations and so on and so forth. So we have occupational and safety laws, which is, for example, the OSH Act, which is the one I've just discussed in the previous slide, Occupational Health and Safety Act. And then we also have the Petroleum Health and Safety Environment Regulations. Other laws that are relevant to us here are the public safety laws. And this is, for example, Traffic and Road Safety Act and the Public Health Act. Now, as I said, that we will be looking at two cases that have occurred, two incidences, very unfortunate incidences that have occurred in Uganda in the past few, maybe the past year or less. And you'll find that specifically those two incidences are thoroughly covered in both the Traffic and Road Safety Act and in the Public Health Act. We also have construction safety laws, building control regulations, for example, and electricity safety regulations. All of these are available, and depending on your different business areas, I don't know how many of you are in construction, how many of you are in other areas, catering or hospitality, and so many others. But all of these do matter to each of you. So again, please get copies of all regulations and standards and the acts that are relevant to your business. So the employers and contractors' health and safety responsibility under common law. So we have the vicarious liability, and this is really a breach of direct duty or care. And you see what we've put there in brackets, negligence. This is when you hear words like gross negligence on the part of the employer, gross negligence on the part of the contractor, gross negligence on the part of the government agency, and so on and so forth. And it also is a breach of statutory duty. Your statutory duty is very, very well articulated in the Act and in the various acts, as well as in the various government policies, laws and regulations. We then look at employer direct duty of care. I want to stress this, and as I said, everything, each slide, as we go through each slide, keep thinking of these two cases. There might be others that you've been party to. Keep thinking so that as we're discussing these things, you're looking at them using a real life example and saying, what does that mean? What could that mean in the case of the car accidents that have taken many, not just Rajiv Ruparelia, may his soul rest in peace, but so many Ugandans. You remember even at that exact site, it was many Ugandans had been passing away or having very serious injuries from there. So this is when we talk about the employer's direct duty of care. So the employer to take reasonable care of their employee, to have competent staff. It is your duty to make sure your staff are competent, because if they are not competent and an accident happens and there's loss of life, or there's a serious injury or any injury or damage to property, the ball comes to you. The buck stops with you. The law is very clear. The staff will not be at fault. It will be the employer. Everything that goes wrong in your workplace comes to you at the end of the day. The staff might be also, have some consequences coming to them, but the company and the owners of these businesses are the first point of direct duty of care or negligence, therefore. Safe places of work, I don't think I need to labor this. Safe plant and equipment, so if your equipment is incorrect, it's not the right kind of equipment for purpose, then that falls on the business owner and not the staff who are given inappropriate equipment to work with. And then the safe systems of work. Again here, this is very important. What are the processes? Who makes sure, who is monitoring the work? How is the work distributed? How is it supervised? All these are part of that approach, a safe system approach or a safe system of work. These principles are all across, whether it's road safety or construction safety or working at heights, all of these things are part of that safe system of work. There is a process that needs to be taken to ensure that the work is done in the right way by the right people at the right time. So not doing the work or keep on postponing the work until we have things like Chitezi happening because of constant postponing. So all of these we will also look at when we look at the risk assessment, because therein we also prioritize and then we also give timelines depending on just how high the risk is, the scoring of that risk is, the likelihood of it happening and what will happen if it happens, the level of the consequences if something fails. So those are the safe systems of work. As I've said, think now, how could have this been, all of these, how could they have been applied to the construction site where Ugandans have lost their lives at Kajansi? Where could it be? Could it have been, not Kajansi, Busabala, where could it have been applied to the Chitezi disaster and those that you all know about that have happened that maybe in the interest of time I cannot bring here today. So developing health and safety policies. Again, this cannot be left out because it's a cornerstone and it is a legal requirement that every business has a health and safety policy. This is important. So I remind you, if you haven't done so yet, whether you were in the last session last year, this is important. So I remind you, if you haven't done so yet, whether you were in the last session last year or this, that please develop your health and safety policy for your organization. It will really help your business. Just to understand that the safe systems are in place, that all your business is meeting standards, is adhering to laws and policies and regulations. So the overview, the law says that every business must have a health and safety policy sets out your general approach to health, how you as an employer will manage health and safety in your business. It should clearly say who does what, when they do it and how they do it. If you have 5 or more employees, you must write your policy down. As I said earlier, it is a legal requirement. If you have fewer than 5 employees, you do not have to write anything down, but it is still useful to do so. Usually when we write down things, we have a better understanding of what we want to set out to do, and it's a quick way to share with the few employees you have, and even those visitors who come to your places of work. So it's really good practice to have it written down, instead of not writing it down just because you have 4 people. Even those 4 people are important, and you want them as safe as possible. The law does not forgive you if you have 4 employees. Every employee, every person in the community around you, everyone that comes in contact with your business processes and products does need to be safe, and so an HSE policy is good for whatever number of employees you have. And of course, as I've said, you have to share the policy and any changes to it, whether it's something that has occurred. As I said, when accidents happen, we get a chance to go back and review our policies, and sometimes that leads to a change in procedures, a change in policy, and so any changes that are made must be discussed with your employees and then shared. Your policy should cover 3 areas. State your general policy on health and safety, including your commitment, and this should be at the highest level of the business. The most senior person in the company is the one who should sign it and make sure it is reviewed regularly. Responsibilities for health and safety: list the names, positions, roles of the people in your business who have specific responsibility for health and safety. In that list, the list should be clearly placed in a place where everybody can see, and also the contact details, email and telephone numbers should be included in this list, so that if anyone needs someone, they're able, in an emergency or just an urgent question, they know how to reach these people who have been listed. Arrangements for health and safety: give details of the practical arrangements you have in place, showing how you'll achieve your health and safety goals and objectives. And this could include doing risk assessments, training of employees, and using safety signs or equipment. Again, as I keep reminding you, let's look at all of these things and try to relate to see where the relationship is in the 2 cases I've presented for us to think on, not necessarily to give feedback on, just to think. This is really for thinking, not necessarily for putting a case together. We're not in a courtroom. That is for the courts of law. But today we're using that to think in real life terms of what can happen, how it can be stopped, and if it happens, what are the consequences of failure. Health and safety risks fall under a number of categories. There are quite a number. They're almost up to possibly 8, but today I'll only share a few in the interest of time. Last time I shared many more, but today I'll pick the ones that continue to beleaguer our country and our businesses and our operations. Slips and trips and falls is on this list because it's the most common risk in any workplace, and so I'll keep it there, but I won't say too much about it. It's pretty obvious, and you can read on the slide. So this is wet surfaces, uneven floors, poor lighting, cluttered areas, inadequate safety equipment. Actually, when I said lightning by mistake, I remember that's another thing we've been seeing in the newspapers. Students dying from lightning. All of these things fall under the same scope of health and safety. So it's very wide. And then, of course, inadequate safety equipment. Mental health and stress, again, I've kept this here because of what we're seeing more and more. This conversation is becoming more relevant more than ever in our workplaces, in our communities, and it's important that we have more trainings of staff specifically on mental health and stress. Now, stress might not come from the workplace. It could come from home. But when a person is stressed, whether they're stressed from the work or stressed from personal issues at home, that always impacts the employee. Even when they come to work, they come with these problems, and it will get in the way of the ability to work, and not just to deliver productivity, but also in terms of working safely. So it's important that we start to look at more training of staff in terms of how to best manage manage their stress, and also look at ways that within the human resource team, or if there's an HSC team within our unit or department in your organization, that more is done to address, but also to see when a person is maybe having some stress, that this can be picked up as early as possible, and that the HR team and HS team can do whatever they need to support the member of staff who is going through a time of stress. So I think this one we can pack it for a bit now, but it's something that we would like to come into and delve deeper into at another point in the future. Fire and explosions. This one is a key one, especially for this sector. And so it can never be undermined or underestimated. Fire hazards can be present in almost every working environment, while they are more prevalent in specific environments. They are still a risk in offices and storage facilities where the risk may seem lower. There are many potential causes of fires in workplace environments, and some of those are electrical problems, overloaded circuits, smoking, heating equipment, spills or leaks of flammable or combustible chemicals, and accidentally leaving equipment or appliances on, or improperly storing flammable materials. And this can also lead to fires. So here, those when you all conduct your risk assessments, you're able to see how high your risk is for fire and explosion, and that will really be directly a result of what kind of business you are engaged in, and then you'll be able to look at mitigation and what can be done to prevent any fires happening, and procedures to reduce the risk, and also emergency response in case a fire does occur. Now, road safety. This is an area I have had a lot of years of experience in, and today I thought we can talk about this. Road safety is one of the biggest killers and of Ugandans at large. It's a leading cause of death in a certain age group, and it's only getting higher. The numbers are only getting higher every year, but the demographics of who is getting more injured is changing as well. It's always been pedestrians and then passengers. We're seeing a lot more now of borders. So so there is a decade of action for road safety, and there are very clear targets for road safety, and this is a global decade. I think right now the country is commemorating the Global Road Safety Week, and the Ministry of Works and Transport, together with the Road Safety Group called Rosako, had a conference of 2 days discussing road safety. So road safety, very much like general health and safety, which is relevant in your workplaces, road safety works with a safe system approach. You'll find that this is the same, as I spoke earlier, as the safe system of work. And it's encouraging or recognizing that errors are inevitable. We are human, we will make mistakes. Can we go back to the slide, please? Yes. But that the system should be designed to mitigate the severity of those errors. The core principle is that no one should be killed or seriously injured on the road or at their workplace, regardless of the mistakes they made. I don't know how I can stress this enough, but I'd like you at this point again, go back to the 2 cases I've talked about. For example, yes, we know that the young man was speeding terribly, but were the conditions, were they forgiving? Were they forgiving? Were those concrete barriers forgiving? Were they able to give way, which is the standard? That is standard practice. If you put a barrier or anything in a road, you're supposed to make sure that what you use gives way to allow the driver to get back control of the vehicle and slow down. So, with the Chitezi, for example, if there were mistakes, was it acceptable that people died in those great numbers and in such a horrific way, and a pile of garbage? There are things that really we have to understand, that if it's one act that fails, that's one thing. But when the whole system fails, then we have a huge problem. And that's when we talk about safe systems of work in general health and safety, and in road safety we talk about safe system approach. So the key elements of the safe system approach, and I tell you, these are the same elements that you'll find here for road safety, are the exact same ones in general occupational health and safety. One of them is human error. The approach acknowledges that people make mistakes and that these mistakes can lead to accidents. Then vulnerability. It recognizes that humans are vulnerable and can be harmed by the forces of a crash, right? And that's why we have to mitigate the crash so that it's as much as possible not fatal. The system's responsibility is another key element. The system providers, those who plan, those who design, those who build, and those who manage the road network are ultimately responsible for preventing fatal and serious injuries, even when human errors occur. And this goes back to the principle I spoke about, duty of care or negligence. So in your own businesses, whether it's your staff that are going out on the road, on borders or in vehicles, doing their work, providing services or bringing products to your clients, it is you, the business owner, who must provide the system, the safe system of work and the safe system approach. You must plan, you must design, you must build, you must manage the safety of your staff, of your workplace, and of the public, the community around you, and those who engage directly with your business. Then there's an element of shared responsibility. All stakeholders, including road users, this is specific to road safety, this site, but please remember, again, I stress, it is the same across. So every time I say road users, you can see the public or the employees. Share the responsibility for creating a safe environment. So if the business owner has put everything in place and said that these are the people that are in charge, as we said, you have a list of those responsible in your policy, which is put up somewhere that is visible for all to see. If all of those are doing their part, and then this one employee will, for example, refuse to wear a helmet because of their hair or something like that, then that employee is putting the whole business at risk. So there is that element of shared responsibility, and it must be done, and this will require training of staff, changing of culture at the organization, changing of mindset changing and behavior changing. These take time, and with the bigger organizations, there's more resources, but with smaller organizations, it's quicker because you've already started putting these cultures in place and you grow with them. And that's the best approach, really, is to start as soon as possible and grow it with the organization as the organization grows. And then the focus is on the whole system, not one thing. And this is just exactly what I've been saying before. We focus on a whole system, not on this one person failed, so it's their problem, or this one department failed, and that's the problem. For example, with Chitezi, you see that the people that were held accountable were the executive director, the deputy executive director, and I think the director of health. Yes. So you see, they were looking at a whole system, different things. Now, the system is bigger than that, but that is not the discussion for today. As I said, we're using these two examples just to keep in mind, bring it to life situations, which I think will be helpful for you as you start to look at your risks in your own organizations and develop your own policies, and also, of course, do your risk assessment and mitigation measures. So now we talk about construction site safety. I know that not all of you are necessarily in construction, but for those of you that are, many of these things do matter, and I know that in the oil and gas sector, there's a lot of construction going on, whether it's roads or at the different operating sites. The construction is ongoing for this sector, and so it does matter whether you're actually in the construction sector or not. You will find that whether you're in hospitality, whatever you're doing in this oil and gas sector in terms of a business owner, you will interface with construction, and therefore your safety will be important when you're interfacing with the different stakeholders, and you find yourself dealing with this, whether it's on our roads or, as I said, at the different sites where you do your work. So put in place road classification, including for urban streets that meet the safety needs of all road users. So here we are talking about classification. The next one is standards. Standards are important, and you'll find that this is important not just in roads, but even the design and construction of different infrastructure that are not for transport over the oil and gas sector. So we also need to understand the standards and what needs to be done. For road safety, this would be more for engineers in road construction, so I won't labor that too much. And then we also want to adopt general prescriptions and standards for infrastructure for non-motorized traffic, crossings, separation with motorized traffic or bicycle lanes, and pedestrian paths and sidewalks. This is important for all sectors where there's construction, where are people passing, around the construction? Has it been blocked off? And if yes, where are the safest places for people to walk and for non-motorized traffic, but also for vehicles? Sometimes there's diversions, which are important, but to understand that these things need to be there, we need to have signs and signals that are visible, but also that are adopted internationally. They're there. It's part of your job as a business owner to look at these harmonized signs and signals. There are different types of signs. Last year, I talked about the different signs and the types of shapes for different signs and signals, the way they can be most visible. And these are not just for roads, they're for construction sites, but they're also for your workplaces where there's a hazard. For example, a floor is being cleaned, or some inflammable materials are being stored somewhere. Do you have a signage there? So signs and signals are extremely important. And then we establish national standards on safety facilities. Including sufficient numbers of rest areas, adequate emergency lanes, and devices such as traffic separation devices and fences. Sorry, could we go back? There's a slide. There's a decade of action pillars, which were road safety management, safe road users, safe vehicles, safe roads, and emergency response. I'm coming back to this because I hadn't talked about it. And I'm really now going to focus on emergency response, which is relevant for every kind of business and every kind of situation. So we want to make sure that in our policy, we understand how you're going to manage emergencies as a business owner. Do you know who needs to be called? Do you have the right equipment in terms of a fire? Do you have some kind of engagement with a health facility where you can take your staff if there's a problem? Do you have first aiders that are trained at your workplace? And so on and so forth. So this is very important that every business owner, and as you're designing your health and safety policy, you include a section on emergency response. And there are different types of responses, and emergencies. Your risk assessment will tell you what emergencies are most likely to occur in your business. Is it a burn? Is it a fall from height? And what you have in place if that happens and you're dealing with an emergency. At this point, I think we can have some questions.
Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you back for that very nice session. I think we have at least learned quite a lot. A lot has been captured. And for you out there who are taking notes, I am very sure you at least know something about health and safety. There is a lot that Ms. Barbara has thought about, and I have just a few questions here just to clarify. When it comes to game health and safety, especially when we were talking about the policy, maybe just pose like two questions and we respond to them, then can continue. Like, what are the key components of a strong health and safety policy? And then, with your experience, what are the most common gaps in how organizations implement these policies? And then on health and safety policy, how can small or resource-limited organizations still maintain high safety standards? Yeah, maybe you can respond to those, then I can bring in another set on the rest.
Okay, So, sorry. The key components, sorry, I'll just, if it's okay, I'll just look at them from here so that I don't miss anything. Basically, the health and safety policy that is strong needs to address ownership. So first thing is ownership, that the policy is owned at the very highest level. The policy should, therefore, it has to be developed by the top management. So it's a top-down policy. It's not a bottom-up policy. That is one of the strongest things. If it's developed by the staff and then presented to the management or the board, actually if there's a board, the board is the one that approves the policy. So it's very important that the ownership of this policy, that how it's developed is from the very top, because the second question is about gaps, and it clearly addresses that. The next thing is the policy must set out a brief understanding of the business that is that you're involved in, the kind of business that you do, and then your objectives and your goals for the policy. Why do you have a policy? And what do you want the policy to do? So the objective is the why, the goals are what. What do you want it to address or to stop from happening? And then it's also very clear, just to outline how you intend to implement the policy. That's another key component. For example, do you want to have a safe system work? You want permit to work under that safe systems of work. So you just briefly, because our policy is not, the statement is short, but the policy is a bit longer. The statement is the one that you put up on, it must be visible at every organization at the point of entry. So even your visitors, when they enter, they can see it. The policy is a bit longer. So in that policy, how do you intend to implement the policy? And I think after that, you need to have an agreed time where, or time, but also situations under which the policy requires review. I think those are the top key components or elements of a strong policy. So the gaps in implementation. The gaps are usually, there are so many, but the most common ones will be management, commitment by management, and by this I mean administratively, to make sure that the policy is actually implemented in terms of, are the staff trained? Are they aware of the policy? Are they working within the policy? So it's usually going to be a management issue, the level of management effort that is put by the management, top management, or even the board. And here we also talk about another gap is accountability. when the policy is not clear. Remember that list of names that you need in your policy? That when you're not sure who is in charge of what, then it's very hard to say this one person is the one to be held accountable for this fatal injury or for this serious injury or for this loss of billions and billions of shillings of equipment being damaged. So that's the first gap, is the administrative implementation of the policy. The second, and this is a big one, and also starts to talk to the third question that Michael has asked, financial. You see, health and safety policies and implementing those policies requires a financial commitment. It's not enough to say we want to be safe, we're going to be safe, we're going to do everything. You have to put, how do they say, your money where your mouth is. You have to invest. And this is often a problem. I even said it last time. It's a problem, and yet it's, if you do make that investment, you are doing something. It's like paying for insurance. If you make that investment, we already looked at a slide where we're talking about the benefits of improved or good health and safety practices in a company. The benefits far outweigh the investment that you'll make. And it's so important for each of you that are owning businesses to try and sit down and measure, put them on a weighing scale. If I'm found non-compliant because, you know, an audit is being done by one of the your regulators, or if I have a death or a serious injury at my workplace, or my business operations cause a problem in the community, and you are sued. We're lucky Uganda is not, we're not great at litigation in terms of, we're not litigious. We can let things go without going to court every single time over every single small thing. But if we were, you would very, very quickly understand that the benefits far outweigh. Then there's that reputational damage as well. You don't want any of those things, not in a big business, but not even in a small business, because your small business, I'm sure you're planning to grow it. No one starts a business and wants it to stay exactly where it was in 5 years, in 10 years. We're all in it to grow it and to do better and to build a legacy. So you can't do that when you're losing your staff to fatal accidents. Your staff are living with, they are losing limbs at the workplace. The school next door to your business caught fire because of your operations. So yes, there is a financial aspect to it, and also, of course, depending on the level and types of risk that your business is involved in, will determine the amount of investment. But generally, investment will be in things like training, continuous training of staff, if necessary, of course, the fire drills, you know, all of these audits, emergency response drills. Those are not very expensive. Then, of course, fire systems, depending again on how high your risk is for fire or explosion. Then the kind of fire fighting equipment will vary quite a lot. So that's quite expensive, to be honest. So there are areas that money is required. Otherwise, having a policy with all these nice components, Michael, and then it's time to implement and there's no money, we might as well not have done the policy. And therefore, we might as well understand immediately that we've opened ourselves to non-compliance. Grief when we've lost or we are the cause of fatality or public health issues within the so I'd like to see the administrative in terms of, training, supervision, accountability, who is in charge, who is supervising this job as it's being done, who is supervising the other one, and then money. So I always go back, Chitezi, for example. We know more or less, I think, we all Ugandans, we know that this was a money problem, right? I think there were other problems, but there was warnings to KCCA for years. There had been studies, there had been reports. It was known that this thing was, it was a time bomb, just waiting. But every budget, they would push it to next, push it. So that's money, but it's also maybe, on another side, it could be a failure of some sort. In terms of administration, were they able to talk to the people who had the money, for example? Was it a communication problem? These are the administrative problems. Was the person down here who saw the risk able to convince the higher people that this thing cannot wait any longer? So communication, those are administrative gaps, and then financial gaps. Now, the last question is monitoring high safety standards in smaller operations, organizations. I know for a fact that the risk assessment alone, if done properly, will be commensurate to your business operations, the risks, and therefore the cost attached to implementing a policy. So I think these things are within ratio. I would not think that a big operation of 500 staff drilling a well somewhere, or compared to a smaller operation doing similar work but on a smaller well, or with fewer staff, that the principle will be the same. For that, please be very clear. The laws do not change because you're smaller. The standard does not change because you're smaller. So what will likely change, again, this depends on the type of risks. You might be a small business, but your risk is very high. You might be working in tunnels. You might be working mostly at heights. You might be working in jobs that are highly explosive. Explosion is highly likely. So, but again, I repeat, the standards do not change because we are talking about human life. The standards will never be compromised, should never be compromised. What will change is the level of investment, and that should come out very clearly. So I don't think anyone should worry, oh my God, I can't manage to do what Total Sinuk does. I can't manage to do what MTN and Airtel does. But I can manage to do exactly in ratio to what they do, in ratio to the kind of business operations I'm involved in.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Barbara. Then I think I have just a follow-up question here on the issue of safety risks. Like, you've been sharing a number of examples. Like, can you share an example of a workplace incident that could be easily avoided, but then it happened? Like, if you come up with where you think, like, if they had a better risk assessment, they would avoid that incident. Then, how do you prioritize which risks to address first, especially in high-risk industries like construction? Then on safety, what role does employee behavior play in risk prevention, and how can it be improved? That's about health and safety.
And this is the, sorry, just repeat the last question.
What role does employee behavior play in risk prevention?
Okay, so there are so many incidents that I imagine or that I know of that could have been avoided, but actually did go on and happen. So, and what could have been done, for example? So, in line with our discussion today, I'll give the example of the many crashes that have happened at Busabala, not just the one that made headlines. So many other Ugandans had died there or had received serious injuries or had damaged their vehicles. Never mind all the border riders who are constantly in accidents there. So that incident, yes, we know that people are often speeding on that road, but the barriers, I don't know if, I'm assuming that we are all kind of familiar with this case, which is why I thought it would be a good one, because it was in every paper, every radio, every TV. So it's different than if I was using something that only few of us had knowledge of. So, for example, couple of things that could have prevented that particular. Now, we won't go back and back, but on that day and on those days where different people have experienced accidents, they are fatal or serious injury accidents, those barriers became the thing that everyone was focusing on. People focused on two things: the speed and the barriers. Those barriers, for example, we know that if someone is speeding and they went through that, under that bridge, and it was just speed, you'd see maybe a car overturning, is lost control, or is overtaking and hit something. But in this case, the car drove straight into the barriers. The barriers were not there before. They are put, we don't know what directs when to put them and when to remove them. Ugandans don't have the answer of that yet. Yeah. But for sure, this is not rocket science. That if, number one, there are many elements, and this is the thing with safety and accidents, it's often not one thing contributing. There are usually a number of things that come together at the exact same time and cause this problem. It's not, and you know, so you can't blame it on just one thing. So mostly we look at what was the worst of the many things, right? And that's when we talk about risk and mitigation. So in that case, the barriers are there. So that's number one, the barriers are there. They are put at times that are not shared with the public. 1 minute they're there, the next minute they've been removed. The lighting in that section of the road was poor, and the traffic management plan, which should happen with every construction site, even at Sinuksa operational areas. I'm sure with all the construction that has been going on at Kingfisher, there's been very obvious traffic management. So guiding traffic around the site, making sure that traffic is safe, not just the staff that are working in this site, but everybody passing through is safe. So we have the barriers being put in place and removed place. Nobody knows under which kind of schedule. No warning. The lighting is poor, so low visibility in that area. Then the type of barriers that were used. Those concrete barriers are not supposed to be used. We see these barriers mostly at around, for example, State House, American Embassy. These barriers are usually used for security, for bombs. They are not supposed to be in the middle of a road. Sometimes they can use them on the sides to bring a car back. There are barriers that are created to bring a car back. But for them to be placed directly in front to cause a head-on, the head-on collision is the worst, even car to car. But now this is a steady block, is immovable, it's heavy. So in road safety, we always say that any objects along the path of a road must be, to as much as possible, they should be movable. So for example, in other countries, if they had those kind of barriers to say no through way, even if a car hits, that barrier would have been made in a way that it can give way to allow that driver to slowly regain control of the car, not to smash it to smithereens, right? So the things, therefore, to answer your question, that could have been done, the traffic management plan should have been in place by the health and safety officer of that contractor.
Yeah.
The relevant government authorities with that, who have that road in their care, should have had also additional monitoring, right, of the construction site. So it's like now CNOC gives this business person a job. CNOC, and I know CNOC does it, has their own team that supervise even the supervisors of the contractor, you see, and that is what even UNRWA does. So the first thing was supervision was not there of what this contractor was doing on site. Number two, the type of barriers were wrong, so standards were not being
So what type of barriers were they supposed to use in that case?
In that case, there are different types of barriers, but even just what are they called? The hazard tape could have sufficed.
Okay.
But ideally, they could have put cones. There are so many different things that they could have used, but not those concrete. The fact that they were concrete is why the accidents there are worse than other places. And then, of course, there could have been more lighting and better communication with the public to say. So 4 things could have been done: better lighting and visibility, right, use the correct equipment, and allow the public to know when these things are on and off, and then better supervision of the contractor. Those 4 things, if they had been in place, we would never have seen what has consumed our news, all our media for the last week. And what, not just for this one individual, but all the other Ugandans who have died, not just in that one spot, but these are happening in many, many construction areas, whether on roads or other infrastructure. So, yeah. In terms of prioritizing of risks, we will be going and looking at an actual risk assessment after a short break. And in that place, I'll be able to show you exactly how we prioritize risks. What we do is we use a matrix, and it tells you the likelihood of a risk. So how likely, let's go back to Chitezi, the likelihood that this thing was going to collapse, was it high or low or medium? I think towards the end, it had become high. So you give it a score. Then you look at the severity. If it happens, what are we dealing with today? Are we dealing with deaths? Is it multiple deaths? Is it bruises? People get bruises and they'll go to a clinic and get some band-aid. So we look at two things. We look at the likelihood, and then we look at the consequences, how bad. So when you look at those two, they are both, we score them, and then we know that now if something is very high on likelihood and very high on consequence, that is the one you take immediately. Also, if something is very high in consequences, like it will result in multiple deaths, like Chitezi, even if the likelihood is medium, it's the first thing you do. So, multiple deaths, any death, multiple deaths is the cornerstone. Everything else, then the likelihood. You know, it could be something where, okay, it's probably, if it happened, it would be maybe 40% it can happen. Like, we don't expect it to happen. But then, if it should happen, what are we dealing with? So that's how you look at risks, and then you prioritize. And that's where you put your money. And when you're looking at your action plan, you also give those actions a shorter period of time. You don't leave it to next year. Those ones that are high on both sides, you want to do them in 6 months max, 3 to 6 months. You don't want to linger and sit on them. Yeah.
Okay, now let's go on this topic that is very important. This issue about mental health and stress. Mental health and stress is some issue that is very serious when it comes to workplaces. Mm-hmm. And I think very many workplaces have really failed on sorting this issue, because maybe I would say that for all the time I have worked, I have never had anyone talk to me about mental health and stress. It's on very many occasions I might be at work when I'm stressed, when I'm mentally not well, but I have no one to talk to. So, just for clarifications, why do you think it is overlooked? Why do you think it is overlooked in very many workplace programs? And what are some of the signs of work-related stress or burnout that employees should watch for? Then on the same issue about mental health, there are some low-cost strategies that that employers can adopt just to support employers' mental being. Low cost, whereby, because sometimes I know they can't afford people like you. You'll ask for quite a lot of money, and all workplaces can't afford to have experts in that. So, what are those low-cost strategies that you think all workplaces can have to help their employees be well and not stress? Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So, mental health, actually, I will share. For me, it's very important because I experienced burnout personally. And I think before I share my experience, which will also kind of share what the signs are that you can look out for, especially as business owners and managers, there are signs where you can tell there's something not right. But for example, the reason it's largely underlooked is because we haven't understood it for so long. There's always a time for something, and we're now facing that time for, as Uganda. As all other countries, we're not, even in Europe, in the Americas, mental health is kind of new. It's not as new as it is here, but it's also new. It's not something that they also took into account too much. So I think there's just been so much. I think as humans, we tend to look at physical injury because it's more visible. If you see someone and their hand has been, they have a cut and they're bleeding, of course that's immediately you want to do something. But with mental health, it's often something that is in someone's mind, and it's very hard for someone else to know. So until something tragic happens, like suicide, And most mental health situations don't lead to those extremes, so it's often left out. But also, these days, I think the way we live, the way we work, things have changed a lot, and our lifestyles are more stressful than they've ever been. And I think that's why we're seeing more of mental health issues. It's just that they are more prevalent than they were before. It's not that we were just ignoring it. I think it's just become more and more. So my burnout started maybe around 2017, I think. 2018, let's say 2018, where I started to feel different about my interest in my work. I was failing to do work. I used to be, not to boast, but I used to be very, very highly productive and effective. And I started to feel like I didn't want to work. I was tired of the work. In fact, I was so just fed up of everything that I started thinking, I want to resign. Because I didn't understand what was happening. Yeah. I just thought, I've been here 7 years, and I think I've done my part, and it's time to let someone else take on this huge burden of this job. So I actually put in my resignation, but I was not able to resign for about another year or so. So in the end, I left my work in 2019, just before COVID hit, November. When you burn out, it doesn't just impact your work. My son, it was Christmas, and my son had his birthday, his Christmas presents wrapped, and someone gave him a present that required all sorts of manual, what is it called, handling. You know, you have to assemble that thing, it's a gadget. Yeah. And I usually was very happy to do that, but I remember that day when he opened the gift and I saw it, I had such a sense of anxiety. In my mind, I was like, oh my God, another one, another one. So I got to a point where just even the small things I was doing before had become very difficult for me to do. That's when I knew that there's something going on here. And for me, I'm not shy about these things, and I think the day we stop being shy to talk about them is the day we'll start to change the situation, even in the workplaces. And that's one of the low-cost strategies, to let people talk about it. I'll, in fact, encourage them. So I decided to take myself to see a therapist. Before I even told anybody. So it was very much just me thinking about what's going on. Let me go and see a therapist. Before I even tell anyone, I want to be the first to know what's wrong with me. And she confirmed. We did some, blah, blah. And she confirmed that I was suffering burnout and made some recommendations. But yes, so my first thing is to just let you know, it took me about a year to get back to my normal self. It took a really, really, really long time because your mind changes and you're so exhausted. But after a year, I was able to be a bit normal. But so burnout is real. Good people, it is real. And it's not nice because it really interferes in your work productivity and in even your home life. It affects that. So in terms of law strategies, talking, HR is usually the best place to. Now you can even have a mental health policy. You can have an environmental policy. So you can have an HSC policy, yeah. But also you can have under that or within that or separate from that, you can have a mental health policy. And that can be with the HR department, would be the best suited place, or they could work together with HSC. But trainings are available. These days, there are so many, even on YouTube. You just pick one and you have a session. You know how you have like toolkit trainings, you know, HSC trainings, maybe once a month. You have, someone can pick something really nice off YouTube. There are so many podcasts now. There's some really, really good ones. Just have that, share it, and let the staff talk about it. It costs nothing at all. And then the HR maybe can have once in a while focus group discussions. You'll see even in the risk assessment when I get to it, that this is another way to do it. Get group discussions. Have members of different staff, you know, management, or else you can have, if it's, for example, a school, you can bring together the cleaning staff and have them talk, because people have different abilities to feel free amongst their peers. But the thing that is you bring awareness, bring a place that they can talk to each other and to experts, if you know, and the expert would be a counselor, really, a counselor, but that would only be at the point that someone is actually, you have a staff member that is dealing with burnout or depression or whatever it is. Then you can have a counselor who you can bring in. I'm sure, if I'm not correct, there's a requirement for some businesses working with SINOC to have some kind of medical insurance. I think so. So it's important that maybe that is covered as well, that a counselor is availed in the event that a staff member requires one. But the low-cost strategies are there. Awareness, talking about it, and putting in place measures if someone needs counseling, that they can be told who to go to.
Okay, now to sum up this all, let's maybe look at road safety briefly, and construction, and then fire. Like, what are some of the most common causes of fire incidents in workplaces, and how can they be prevented? Then, when it comes to road safety, how can workplaces maybe instill like a safety first mindset in drivers and transport staff at these workplaces? Then on construction site safety, how can contractors ensure that even short-term workers adhere to safety standards? Then when it comes to roads also.
So safety, and then the construction question?
The construction, like how can contractors ensure that even short-term workers adhere to safety standards? Then also, do driving schools have healthy and safety experts? Because if we had health and safety experts at the driving schools, I think we would also be avoiding some of these road accidents and issues that happen on the roads. Because for me, all I know when we talk about health and safety on the roads, I have people who think whenever they're on the road, they have to be like driving at 60 kilometers per hour. I have some gentleman I know who told me that these safety rules by the traffic police of like placing cameras in different parts of Kampala, that those are not very right, because if they put in place those safety measures, people will miss on the appointment, will not reach their destinations on time. Do you think that is very good when it comes to safety and health?
And it's designed the kind of surface, the hazards around that place. Is it on a steep? Is there an excavation? Is it, you know? So it's them that know when they're designing their road, where the problems are, and how to mitigate. those issues. That's when you see they put some of those, you've seen those crash barriers when the road has on the sides a metal barrier. They put those in place because they know that in this section we need to make sure cars don't go over. So it's the designers who know. Now the only way the designer can communicate to us, the road users, is through, they are not there on the road, they've done their part, they've designed it, they've constructed it, it has been commissioned, it's now being used. The way the engineer talks to us, to the road users, is through those signs. To tell us, now here there's a steep slope, please reduce speed. Now here there's a junction, please reduce speed. Now here there's a construction site, please reduce speed. Now here there's a school, please reduce speed to 30 kilometers per hour. So signs are very, very important. As you see, there's the signs that are on the road. They're also the ones that are they're marked on the actual road, on the asphalt. That's again the engineer telling us, here, overtake, it's safe. Here, please do not overtake, through those markings. So the signs are communication to let us know of hazards, of problems, but also tell us if you want to go to Masaka, you turn right, right? So signage is extremely important for health and safety on roads.
But maybe also interpretation of the signage is something that is very hard, because
yes,
these are just signs. There is no interpretation, nothing like any word.
With all signs, we use standardized signs. Signs all over the world are the same. Whether it's in Ukraine or Australia or India or Botswana or Nigeria or America or Canada, they're the same. And the reason they're the same is to make sure that they're universal. That you don't come from one country and you go to the next country and the signs are different. Then that means the communication is not, it's gone. You've lost communication. So using the right signage is also important. We have had situations where we've seen signs that are not, they were just signs that communicate, and most of them were not able to even achieve 30%. So that's another important thing. So yes, now we have the signs, but interpreting it, you must go to school to know what the signs are. And that's just what it is. There's no other way to do it. Maybe through different media channels, you know, we can find ways to educate in a more mass education, mass public campaign on just signage. That can happen, especially for those who already missed the opportunity and already on our roads and don't know the signs. That will require a different intervention than, you know, than asking them go back to driving school. So maybe some kind of mass public campaign using mass media. So we were also talking about the common causes of accidents. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's what we had the decade of action pillars for road safety, but there's also what is called the risk factors for road safety. These are the areas that people are most at risk. And the first one is, okay, I'm not putting them in any specific order. This is just what they are. Speed. So this is addressing your friend who said these speed limits and speed doesn't matter. Speed is one of the highest risk factors. There are 5. Of course, there are so many, but these 5 are the top 5. Speed is a huge, huge problem for 2 reasons. Speed increases the likelihood that you will be in an accident. You're more likely to lose control of your car or to fail to stop in time if you're traveling at a very high speed. So that's number one, that speed is a problem. The other, so it's a double-sided sword for speed, it's a problem. The second is your severity of injury increases with each kilometer per hour. So from two angles, you see, speed is a high risk factor for causing the accident, but also how badly you will be injured. The second one is helmets. In general safety terms, it's protective, personal protective gear. In road safety, specifically the use of helmets, and then seat belts. So, number one is speed, number two is helmets, and in Uganda I think we are all witnesses to boda becoming more and more of a problem, and there's more and more bodas. I think right now we probably have more bodas than cars. Okay, I'm not saying that as a fact, I'm just saying it. And so helmets is important because now helmets, there are things that we do to prevent the accident. So they're called pre-crash mitigations, and then there's post-crash mitigations. Now, speed is pre-crash. Once the crash has happened, speed is no longer, it's irrelevant at that point. But helmets and seat belts are there in that moment of the crash to save your life, right? And to make sure the injuries are not so bad. So helmets are very important. And then the third risk factor is seat belts. People who don't wear seat belts definitely are more likely to suffer worse injuries and death. Same as people who don't wear helmets will suffer injuries and death. And then driving under the influence. So this is driving under the influence of alcohol or any other drugs that in any way impact your mind, your brain, and your ability to operate a machine, or even to respond to something that just comes in your way. So those are the risk factors that, for example, every time we're doing any kind of intervention, we're doing a mass public campaign, usually they'll be centered around these risk factors. That if you're speeding, you're at a higher risk. If you have no helmet, you're at a higher risk. If you have no seatbelt, you're at a higher risk. If you're drunk, or what's the word if it's not alcohol? High, I don't know, yes, you're at a risk, and so on and so forth. Driving schools quickly do not have HSC experts, and they do not need them. Their job is to teach you how to drive, and what they do is they provide defensive driver training. Some of them also give a short course on first aid at driving schools, and this is how the driving school does their part in ensuring that drivers are safe. But the idea is just by following a proper curriculum, training of drivers, that's standard, that is a national standard driver training curriculum, that is enough to produce a safe driver on our roads. Defensive driving is done usually additionally, same as first aid. I know, for example, Sinuk does that for their drivers it's a periodic thing that they have refreshers, and this is very important for drivers. And so for your organizations, this is how to make sure that your drivers are experienced, that they have their proper permits, but also do refresher trainings. Let them go for defensive driver training and let them go for first aid training as well. This is good practice and is done quite a lot by many companies across the world. So contractors and their short-term workers. Remember, the responsibility is on the person who has hired these short-term workers. Whether they are long-term or short-term, as long as they are on your site working for you or at your workplace working for you, you tell them what they need to do and they do it or they don't. And if they don't, you have to let them go. There's no compromise. There's no compromise because you don't know when a disaster will happen. And it will happen to that very contractor who is refusing to adhere. But guess what? In the end, it is you, the business owner, that is going to be held for negligence or a lack of duty. You've not provided duty of care. So that question is it's the same to a short-term worker or a full-time permanent worker. The rules are there, the policy is there, the laws are there. You follow or you leave. And it's also good to not just say to do it, because we all know in management, if you have laws that you can't enforce, then why should anyone follow them? If you set a precedence that if someone doesn't wear a helmet, that one will leave her because she doesn't want to spoil her hair. Then how will you convince the others that they must wear their helmets? So it's standards, and standards must be kept at all times. Let's see. Causes of fire. I think there was a slide with the causes of fire. Maybe we'll go back to that. But in the meantime, I will talk about safety for drivers, right? There was a question about safety for drivers. Yeah. So good practice is will come across in different ways. We have, I'll just share a few different ways that businesses manage their drivers and ensure that their drivers are safe. So there's trainings which I've talked about. Make sure there's a refresher defensive driver training. There's a toolkit or toolbox talks where they come together and you go through, there's also making sure that you share progress. So put in place, for example, a reporting system where you report number of accidents in 1 month, number of near misses in 1 month, number of fatalities, number of injuries, serious and small injuries, so that usually people, when they are working towards something and doing it together, there's a sense of ownership of those reports. People start wanting to celebrate the next month when they see we've reduced our near misses from 5 to 2, we've reduced our accidents from 3 to 1, and over a year. And I see this being done in many of the big organizations, the multinationals in Uganda. And it does an amazing thing for the drivers because they have set their own targets and they're the ones bringing that change, and it's measurable. There's nothing better than that. So reporting is important, training is important. Enforcement, as I said before, if there's something that has been agreed and the driver fails to adhere, then there has to be steps taken that are visible for all to see. And then these are a bit more expensive, but some companies have onboard computers on their trucks, so they can actually see how the driver is behaving, that they are following the agreed journey plan, that they're driving at the correct speeds at different types of roads and road sections, that even when there's a sharp maneuver, they know. When the truck has stopped, they know. So these are highly effective, but they do come with a cost. But the others are they're just as good. Yes, so I think there's other ways as well, but those are pretty much. I think everything else would fall somewhere under those 5 that I've spoken about.
Okay, I thank you, Miss Barbara. And let's go for a short break. We will be coming back with some very interesting topics.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying, yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying, yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying, yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans. So that's a good way of appreciating and saying, yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying, yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying, yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying, yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend a night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating.
Welcome back to the Sinop Online Enterprise Development Program. Thank you for being here from the day we started on Monday up to today. I think out there, ladies and gentlemen, you are learning, you are taking notes, and you are enjoying these very interesting topics that at the end of the day will help you to be someone who is very developmental, someone who will have a business that keeps growing, because these are hints that really help you to grow your business. So we will continue with our trainer today, who is here to train us about health and safety. And for you guys out there who have been with us in the very first session, we have learned quite a lot about health and safety. We learned about stress, we learned about safety at construction sites, safety on the roads, a lot. So right now we are back with also a very interesting topic, and I welcome back Miss Barbara Mwanje for this other session. So I welcome you back, and we can start immediately because our viewers are eagerly waiting to hear from you. I welcome you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I'm glad to be back. I hope you've stretched during this break that we've had, dear viewers. And yes, I'm glad that we can continue on this important subject of health and safety at our workplaces and in our environments and communities where we operate our businesses. So the next session will really be looking at, we'll be looking very much into risk assessment and how it's done. As I said in the beginning, that the last session we just went and looked at the general overview, but today I want us to delve a bit deeper and actually look at a risk assessment report or matrix, and we shall be looking at that together. So without much more further ado, we can start by just reminding ourselves before we enter the risk assessment. Again, this is setting the tone that we need to remember the types of hazards that we have in different workplaces, depending on the kind of business you're doing or the kind of work that you do or services that you provide. So there's working at heights, there's loud noises, there's radiation, there's high exposure to sunlight or ultraviolet rays, there's extreme temperatures, and I think we saw some of that a while back when we had extremely high temperatures here in Uganda. And then we have fires, we have body stressing from repetitive or strenuous work, and this is usually from handling and other such activities. We have confined spaces with poor ventilation or contaminants. These are high-risk situations. When we are working in a confined space, the risk is pretty high. Electricity, including electric shock, and vibrations that may cause harm to the human body. So just a bit more now, we look at occupational hazards and how to mitigate them. Many hazards are classified or categorized. We have chemical hazards, then we have biological hazards, and so chemical hazards are where an employee or a community is exposed to hazardous chemical materials or substances. And usually what is done to mitigate this is through protective equipment such as gloves, goggles and masks, but also training. In all things, training is important, that the staff that are working are competent, that they are trained, that they understand the material they're working with, they understand the hazards, and they understand how to handle the hazards very well. We have biological hazards, and these you'll mostly see in the health sector, and it's critical to maintain hygiene at such workplaces. Bacterial viruses can be perilous to health due to the use of protective equipment, and everyday cleaning is essential to regulate the safety of the employees and also those who are at this particular workplace, whether it's patients or visitors that come, for example, into a health facility or a clinic or a hospital. Then we have physical hazards. To mitigate physical hazards, organizations need to make sure the workplace is well maintained and the interior-based faults are sorted out to maintain the safety of the employees. So physical hazards are anything that is physically present and movable or immovable, and can cause harm, like tripping over wires and other such things. So all these are also categorized as physical hazards. I would like us to look at what is called the hierarchy of health and safety controls. Now, generally, in the area of safety, whether it's occupational health and safety or road safety, in all safety talk and policy, we always refer to a hierarchy of controls. And these pretty much provide a framework on how to mitigate risks. How do we manage risks? Once we establish there's a hazard here and there's a risk here. Once that's established, what do we do about those? So there are 5 controls, and the hierarchy indicates, as the word hierarchy in English, that one is above the other. So we have 5, and the top one is the most preferred. It's the hierarchy, it's the king, it's the queen of controls of risk at our workplaces, in our communities. And we start with elimination. This is the best thing. It's what we want all the time. Unfortunately, sometimes we cannot achieve it. So the first thing is, when you identify a risk, are you able to actually physically remove the entire risk, take it out of the operation, take it out of the workplace, right? If there is a tree that looks like it's going to fall over, you can remove it completely. But if it's something that is required to run the business, then you cannot eliminate it. So we then move to the second hierarchy, or the second control in the hierarchy of controls. So now we've failed to eliminate this risk. Can we substitute? Can we use substitution? Can we replace it with something else that will work just as well? If it's gas, for example, that we're using in an AC for refrigeration, and that one has been found to be toxic to a certain degree to humans, are we able to replace it? Can we go out and look for another gas that works in the same way and use that one instead of the one that is toxic? So that would now be substitution. So as we go further down, now we failed to eliminate and we can't substitute. The next thing we do is engineering controls. Engineering controls is when you take on additional actions to get this risk contained, to contain it. So, do you need to build a barrier around it, for example? Do you need to put it away from everything else? Do you need to, in other words, isolate it, for example? So there we're looking at, okay, now we can't eliminate, okay, now we can't substitute. How can we mitigate this risk? How can we, is there a way we can work with it and bring engineering controls? And then there's also engineering controls. The next one is administrative controls. Administrative controls are now more about the safe systems work, or, you know, where the procedures are understood, the training is done, or retraining if necessary. Those are administrative controls. Reporting, all of those are administrative controls. And then the last one, after all the other four have been considered, the last one is PPE, and that is personal protective equipment. These are your, I've already mentioned some of these. These are your helmets, these are your goggles, these are your visors, these are your ear plugs. These are all the things that protect a person, your masks that protect a person in the event that they are working in a place where there's a risk. So the important thing to understand here is that many of these controls can be used together. The idea is to get the risk managed, mitigated to the highest level possible. So if there's a risk and you can use 3 out of the 5, please use them. If there's a risk and you feel only 2 is enough to manage the risk, by all means, that's okay. But so I'm trying to say that for all risks, there is need to look at the hierarchy of controls, apply them to the risk that you're trying to mitigate, understand which of the controls are necessary or beneficial to mitigation. And for those which, for example, elimination might fail, substitution might fail, but at no point can a business owner say that I failed all 5. Because if you fail to eliminate, you fail to substitute, you fail to provide engineering controls, you fail to bring administrative controls, you also fail to give PPE, then I would suggest you change the business that you're in and start a new one, because that presents your business with a situation full of non-compliance and huge risks, and therefore huge consequences. So that's the general understanding of the hierarchy of controls. And as we look at the risk assessment a bit later, in a following couple of following slides, we'll be able to see how some of these have been used. Generally, for administrative controls, that one is, I think, always applicable. They might be, PPE might not be needed for all staff, but I'm sure that, and also the other 4, but administrative controls include the policy, include management, include supervision, training, awareness. So at all points, definitely, administrative control is a prerequisite. It is a requirement. So yeah, we're going to look at workplace risk assessment. We've come off the roads, and what we're going to do is look at a risk assessment. So we're going to look at workplace risk assessment, and again, just to refresh our minds, we're going to just look at the general reason that we have risk assessments. Carrying out suitable and sufficient risk assessment is the primary management tool in effective risk management. So when we're talking about administrative controls, risk assessments are a part of the administrative controls. They are a tool that is used by management to understand the risks, to categorize them, to find how to mitigate them, what measures, and in mitigating, to be guided by the hierarchy of controls. So it is a legal requirement for any employer and must be documented wherever 5 or more people are employed. So remember, it's a legal requirement, and the Ministry of Gender and Labour can demand to see your risk assessment at any point that they so choose, and possibly, depending on the area of work you are in the oil and gas sector, even a regulator can ask you for your risk assessments. So same as the policy, whether you have 5 people or more or less, please have a risk assessment, have it documented and available to your staff. Let your staff also know about it. Don't have it done by a consultant, or it can be done internally. Don't have it done by or it can be done internally, and then the staff are engaged. First of all, they are one of, they are a very big group of the respondents during your risk assessment procedure. The staff themselves are required to take part in this. So it's good for them to also see the final report and what has been highlighted, and what measures are going to be put in place to mitigate that risk that they work in or work around. The risk assessment is a straightforward and structured method of ensuring the risks to the health, safety, and well-being of employees and others are suitably eliminated, reduced, or controlled. So I think you see the similar words which I was using under the hierarchy of controls. Can we eliminate it completely? Or if we can't, then we look at how to reduce and or control it through the other 4 controls that are available to us. The main purpose of the risk assessments are to identify health and safety hazards, and then evaluate the risk presented within the workplace. Remember last time we talked about hazard and risk and what the differences are. To evaluate the effectiveness and suitability of existing control measures. So a risk assessment isn't something we do one day, one time, and then we go away. It's supposed to be done annually. Or some organizations do it maybe after 2 years, but it is a periodic exercise. It's not a one-off. So if number 1, the main purpose is number 1, identify, then the next is to evaluate the effectiveness and suitability of existing control measures. So we've done our risk assessment, as you've seen. Therein, we've agreed these are the measures and the actions that we're going to take to mitigate, and we're going to do them in this period of time. then we get to evaluate. Did these measures work? Did they do what we thought they would do when we prepared this risk assessment and we said this is what we're going to do? So we want to know, have they been effective? Have they been suitable to control the existing measures? Sometimes, though, within 6 months or a year, you have new hazards. Maybe the business has grown. Sometimes somebody has come in, you know, you have a bunch of new stuff. You have interns who have come in. So different things at different times might require a review of the existing risk assessment and the measures that are in place. And again, all of these, depending on what it is, you look at the hierarchy of controls. If it's that there are a bunch of interns that come in once a year, then that can, again, all of these, depending on what it is, you look at the hierarchy of controls. If it, then that can be put under administration. Have proper and training they need, and that should be okay. Another reason or purpose is to ensure additional controls, including procedure, are implemented wherever the remaining risk is considered to be anything other than low. So, for example, we have a situation, we have a highly explosive piece of equipment or chemically hazardous materials, and we use engineering controls, you know, to contain these chemicals. And then, so then the next thing is if we know that this has worked, but we can also add more. For example, we can also make sure that any staff that are entering or making contact with this room, the room is the engineering matter control, you've put it in its own room, the signs are there, all those are the additional things, signage, warning people beforehand that in this room there's this, that there's, then you provide personal protective gear or equipment for those. So these are the additional remaining risks can be controlled through additional measures under the hierarchy of controls. Can we go back to biggest problems in implementation is funding, is resources, whether it's and that there is a need for resources to be committed at the highest level of the organization in order that all of the issues that are seen in the risk assessment and the mitigation measures and the timelines for mitigation, that all of these things, which become like an action plan, are done. The action plan is implemented as soon as possible, prioritizing the highest risk areas. So the risk assessment is the one that tells management or the board that this is where we are. Right now we're at a very high risk of an explosion or a fire. And that in order to mitigate this, we're going to need some engineering controls. We might need firefighting equipment and systems, and this is what it will cost. The risk assessment is where immediately someone can tell this is the risk, this is what will happen if we fail to mitigate this risk, this is what we're going to do to mitigate the risk, and this is the priority. And this is the timeline. Because it's high priority or low, we only have 2 months to do this. And so the resources, it's like a budget allocation that is evidence-based, that is coming from an informed place. So the risk assessment is a critical document for every organization, and I will share some of the highlights of such a document, the components, in the hope that you yourselves in your businesses and can begin to look into having your own risk assessments as they are legally required. So how to do a risk assessment? We first start, it's really a five-step process. And right now I'll share a few of that process. It has to be done, some of the key things when to carry out a risk assessment. The risk assessment has to be done before an activity or task is being carried out, or operation. Assessment when people have already died or lost limbs. So ideally, it's done immediately as soon as operations. The risk assessment will tell you how many high-risk areas you have or tasks or activities, and based on that you can decide whether you want to do it annually. But some businesses where the risks are somewhat lower, they can do it in a longer period of time, like after 2 years or so. Again, there's going to be cases where either the current assessment is no longer valid, and or if at all, any stage there have been significant changes to the activity or the task or the operation. For example, you were located at a certain premises and you've now moved to a new premises. Immediately, even if the risk assessment was done 3 months ago, the minute you move to a new premises of business, you must conduct a new risk assessment. Relevant risk assessments should be reviewed following an accident, incident, ill health event in order to verify if the control measures and level of evaluated risk were appropriate from the very beginning, or do they need amendment. So, of course, if you have a fatal accident and yet you've already mitigated as far as you're concerned, you've put the controls in, you've done the engineering controls, you've given them PPE, you've had supervisors, then you still had a fatal accident. So something has gone wrong. So you must always go back. Every time there's an incident, you go back and you repeat the risk assessment. Sometimes risk assessments are broken down into tasks. So each task has its risk assessment and mitigation. So sometimes you don't have to go through the whole risk assessment as a mother document, but you can go into that particular task to understand, but we had done everything we could. Why did it still happen? And so you can evaluate that and make the necessary changes based on what you find. Because something will have definitely gone wrong. If you think you did something and everything was done and there was still an injury or fatality. So step 1 is we identify the potential hazards. It is important to first identify any hazards within a workplace that may cause harm to anyone that comes into contact with the hazard. They are not always obvious, so some simple steps you can take to identify hazards are observation. Walking around your workplace and looking at what activities, tasks, processes, or substances used could harm your employees. So there's a very deliberate effort for the HSC manager, officer, or consultant to actually walk about, to observe the environment, observe people when they're doing their specific tasks. In observing, you're able to see what may go wrong. Is the person bending, and are they bending too much? Is the load they're lifting too heavy? If it's too heavy, can you introduce an engineering control to bring some kind of hoists or other ways of lifting this product? Then looking back over past accidents, and this is where accident reporting is extremely, extremely important. It's a habit that you see is highly, highly prioritized in many of the multinational companies, including CNOOC, that there's every incident, every accident is reported, to the point that even a near miss is recorded. Just the fact that you almost hit something doesn't mean that because you didn't hit it and you continued on your journey, that it's okay. Even that has to be reported. As I told you, with some companies, they actually have onboard computers, and everything can be seen at headquarters. Even a sharp brake, or it's called harsh braking, when a vehicle is braking very harshly, sorry, excuse me, or makes a very severe maneuver, as if dodging something, at the headquarters or wherever the monitor is, they're able to see that something, this harsh brake, something is wrong. This harsh maneuver, something is wrong. And because they already have that in the system, when you return, they ask you to report what happened that time when you braked so harshly, or when you veered off the road so hard, though you managed to come back, but what happened? Those are near misses. You were dodging something, something was about to hit you, or you're about to hit something. So accident reporting must be encouraged. In many organizations, people are afraid to come and report. They prefer to cover it and hide it because they think they will be in trouble. So these are, I think there was a question earlier about changing behavior of drivers. This is an important thing. Part of changing behavior is making sure that drivers feel that if they report an accident, it is not just for, they should not fear punitive action. They must understand that primarily, every time they report an accident, they're helping the company to understand this can go wrong in this way, at this location, for this reason. And so in knowing that, they're able to make sure that it doesn't happen again, together with the driver and other drivers. So accident reporting is a very, very, very important thing. Without it, we're stuck with just observation, and that's not enough information. The next thing is checking the manufacturer's data sheets, instructions, information, and guidance. So when you're providing a service or a product, and you have bought some materials, some chemicals, for example, and you give them to your employee to do the work. It could be something simple like a cleaning agent, you know. It doesn't have to always be something dramatic. It can be just a cleaning agent, and you need to read the instructions. That's what is called the data sheet or the material sheet, to understand what are the hazards with this particular substance and what can be done. These data sheets will often tell you what exactly is in that substance, how toxic it is, and even how to manage being affected from this toxic substance. So it's very important that we are checking all the time our manufacturers' instructions, They also guide us if it's a machine that we've just bought, how is it supposed to be used, and they give us information and guidance. So checking manufacturers' data sheets is important as we are identifying our potential hazards. So, for example, you buy a cleaning detergent and you give it to your staff. You've not bothered to read what harm it can do. So when you're identifying risks, you didn't check the manufacturer's data sheet. So you have no idea that what you've given to your staff may cause them problems in 2-3 years to come because they're inhaling these gases. Where you should have given them a mask because you did not read, you've missed it as a hazard, you failed to assess its level of risk, and you failed therefore to mitigate because it's not even there, you've not seen it. Then consulting with the employees. The best people that know what hurts them or what gives them discomfort is the very people who are uncomfortable. The ones who are doing the tasks, the ones who are using the chemicals, the ones who are lifting things, the ones who are climbing up to clean your windows, the ones who are climbing up to fix your roof. These are the people that are best placed to tell you where they get hurt, where they feel discomfort. So consulting with them is an important part of identifying the hazards. And then it may be useful to group hazards into 5 categories. And the categories are there. I already touched on 3 of the 3 of them. Here we've added ergonomic and psychological. Yeah. So that's the first thing, is we identify the hazards, and these are the ways in which we identify them. Then the second step, now that you've identified your hazards, you're thinking, this hazard, who is the most vulnerable when this hazard is concerned? Who is most likely to be harmed by that hazard? So you now need to know who is at risk, and is it the whole company? Is it all staff? Or is it a group? For example, if there's a risk, there's some risks that happen more with vulnerable employees, like an expecting mother might be vulnerable during that time to working at heights than if she was not expecting. So things like that. Is it employees? Is it contractors? And other people in our workplaces and the community around us. Some of our hazards from our work can in fact affect the neighbors and not just us. So we need to identify all of those people that are at risk from this hazard. So children, young people, new employees, because they've come, they don't know, people who work at home, or people who work alone, like people who go into confined spaces to work. Often they go down there by themselves, so they have risks that others are not party to or exposed to. Then number 3 is we evaluate risk severity and establish precautions. Remember, I talked about this. So we know the hazard, right? Now we need to evaluate the risk, the likelihood, and the severity. And then from there, we establish the precautions. After identifying any hazard and who might be affected, we evaluate the severity the risk may present, should it occur, and then establish suitable and effective controls to reduce this level of risk as far as is reasonably practical. This means that everything possible is done to ensure health and safety, considering all relevant factors, including the likelihood that harm may occur, the severity of harm that may occur, the knowledge about eliminating, reducing, or controlling hazards and risks. availability of control measures designed to eliminate, reduce, or suitably control. And these are the hierarchy of controls that we've talked about. And then the costs associated with the available control measures designed to eliminate, reduce, or suitably control the risk. So, likelihood, severity, understanding that we have a hierarchy of controls, which ones are available to us, and what are the costs associated with that control measure that is required to eliminate where possible, or reduce or suitably control where we cannot eliminate. Assessing the risk of a risk, the severity of risk requires an evaluation of the likelihood of an occurrence and how substantial the consequences that it may cause. Some factors affecting this evaluation include the duration and frequency of exposure, number of persons affected, competence of those exposed, the type of equipment and its condition, and availability of first aid providers, provision, and or emergency support. Emergency support, as I said much earlier today, is part of your mitigation. Actually, it's not a mitigation, it's a response, you see. So it's probably under administrative controls as a way to respond in the event that now something has happened, and now we want to come and provide immediate medical services and evacuation to those that have found themselves the victims of an incident. So now I will go through a risk assessment matrix or report, and this one is for a school called Platinum International Boarding School. This was done at a real boarding school here in Uganda, but I've changed the name, of course, for obvious reasons. But I chose to share a school because, and not a day school, a boarding school, because I feel that a boarding school has so many different types of people from all sorts of walks and lives, grown-ups, teenagers, youngsters, educators, non-teaching staff. So already the pool of people is very representative when we're talking about health and safety. Number two, a boarding school has every imaginable possible risk that is known to any business, from biological to chemical to physical, ergonomic, all of them. So it's a perfect way to share, because it really can showcase all of these different hazard categories and therefore the measures and how to prioritize, and also a very long list of different risks. So we have the hazards, then we have the risks. So I think we're going to spend some time now and just go through this matrix. So you see here that you usually want to report on the following components. And remember, we had our 5 steps, which included observation, consultation, and a few others. I think you remember from the last slide. So now we're bringing those and we're doing this. And so at the point you do this, you've done your observations, you've done your interviews with key informant interviews. Those are like the management, the board, the head teacher, heads of department. You've also talked to teachers, you've talked to non-teaching staff, from the kitchen to the cleaners, you've talked to the store managers, you've talked to the children themselves, the children leaders, and then you've randomly selected from each class. So you've really you've talked to everybody, the security, you've walked around the entire school. So you've now finished all this. Now you're coming down to write down your report. So in the first column, we have the hazard category and then the hazard. Because you can have a hazard category, but you find about 3 risks, right, under that hazard category. So, and then the second one is who might be harmed and how will they be harmed, right? The third one, what are you already doing? Sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes there's something that you're already doing. Then the next question, and all of these things, now remember we were also looking at material data sheets. We were looking at past accident reports. This particular school had no accident reports before. So sometimes you go in and some things are lacking. But the good thing is there's never a time that you're not seeking to improve. So now that they knew we need to keep incident and accident reports, they began after this, assessment was done. So now the next question, after we know what you're doing, what further controls, actions are required? They say in safety, there's never a time you can't improve. You can always improve. So you always want to find out what else can we do. Okay, yes, we have this. What else can we do? So that's that question. And then, and that is usually derived from understanding what the risks are, who was at risk, how they were at risk, and then what is already in place. Then you can now start to think what else can be done. Now, what else can be done is over there, and then we then go to time scale. We have a time scale for further actions to be completed. And then at the end, we have responsible persons and their job title. We want to know who is responsible for this action, not for the area, for that action. So I'll start with the first. For example, we have work-related upper limb disorder. Now in this school, this was happening a lot. A lot of staff were dealing with a lot of muscular disorders, chest pain, back pain, and it was because of the loads that they were carrying, the way they were doing their lifting. They were not lifting in safe ways and they had not been trained. So who is most affected? This was mostly the maintenance and cleaning staff, and then some of the students. The vulnerable workers, they had some really elderly people, they had some expectant mothers in the staff, and they were using some of the chairs. For example, the students, the chairs were metal, and so causing some discomfort to the children. So we also had work equipment that was not ergonomic. I've put there some of these things, the chairs, and so the chairs were also bruising the children. So the children were getting bruises. So these are actually very, very in-depth. When you do a risk assessment, you want to really look at everything and leave nothing to chance. Some things you can leave them, and others you can't leave them. So what are you already doing here? They said they had provision of long-handled cleaning materials to stop the cleaners. For example, when they were washing windows, the ladder only stopped at a certain point. And then so there was a lot of stretching from the ladder, and therefore it was very easy for them to fall off the ladder with that extreme stretching. And so they had said they had some things in place, but that was not enough. And so we thought that there's something more that can be done. Task analysis. For example, as I said before, you can have a risk assessment in general, but if you find that a specific, during your observations, during your consultation during review of medical reports and accident and injury reports, that you see that there's a particular task or activity that is causing issues, then you want to recommend that a task analysis is done for that particular task, so that would have to be done for, especially in sometimes cases you can even agree that for an age, at this age, the task analysis should be done before a person of this age is allowed to do this job. So there's a lot of, there's occupational health and therapists with medical training, and they can support with things like that, especially when you have disproportionate risks for some tasks over others. So here, the task analysis is really to assess the equipment. Is it fit for purpose? Is it the right equipment? Is there something better that can be used to support the staff and minimize the risk? And then we look at the timescales for further action. And for some of these, it was 3 months to 4 months. Because when you're also looking at the risk, and it's a high-level risk, but the cost of fixing the problem, unless it is a high risk in terms of fatality and multiple fatality, sometimes the cost can bring it down in terms of how quickly you need to resolve it, because it might be quite expensive and you need to wait for the next budget year to allocate funds for that particular intervention. Usually this will be with engineering controls more than any of the other ones, and maybe sometimes elimination. So here we have the responsibility, but within your own organizations, you can look at that. There was quite a lot at this school in terms of hazardous substances. There were items, substances that were in storage that were not labeled, had no idea what was in them. It's only the people in the store that knew what was in that jerry can or that container, which is very dangerous, because if that person is not there, then what happens, you know? So labeling became a problem. There was no safety data sheets anywhere. There were so many things in so many stores, but no one, when we asked where the safety data sheets were, there were none at all. Nobody knew where they were. People would receive the goods, open the boxes, take out what they need, and throw away all the instructions. And yeah, so the PPE that was provided for those staff, well, that should have been provided for the staff that were accessing using these chemical substances, was not available. They did not have PPE. No one gave them PPE, but they were handling dangerous substances. So again, there we looked at who is at risk, and what was already being done, and we also thought of what further things could be done. So, for example, ensure that suppliers must comply with the UN's standards. All safety data sheets should be availed and training provided on safe work methods. Expert review on the control measures, especially for chemical substances and medical waste. There was a clinic at the school, and medical waste was not being handled properly. So all of these things, and for some which are very quick, we just did 2 weeks because it's really avail information. And for others, we had to take a bit longer, depending on how complex it was to get that additional control in place. We also had, is that the next one? We also had quite a number of incidences. Actually, there had been a few falls at this school from ladders. People had fallen during work. And one person, I think, sustained an injury, a bone injury and broken bone, and so was out of work for a while. But at this school, you can imagine the buildings are tall. Cleaning, this was mostly cleaning staff that were at risk for their work at height. And we looked at the type of ladders, and the ladders were not the right ones. It's encouraged to use the two-step ladders for working at height and not the one-step ladder. And they had no helmets or fall arrest equipment at all. So if they fell, they had no helmet, but there was nothing to stop the fall. They would just continue all the way at the what is it called? At the mercy of gravity, really. There was nothing else to help them, and so this is not good practice. Everyone working at height needs to have a helmet, the right kind of helmet, and hoists and other equipment to arrest the fall in the event that the fall does happen. The ladders were not secured. Remember, you come back several days while carrying out a risk assessment. It's not a thing you do one day. You have to keep coming back, and this is through observation. You're able to watch them as they clean. They are not prepared, so you just come and you see the guys up on the ladder, and you see exactly how they're cleaning, and you see how secure the ladder is, what type of ladder. These are now done through observation, not through reporting or talking to management. Management might tell you, no, it's wonderful, we give them everything, but you have to observe yourself as you conduct. There was also a 4-to-1 gradient that was not adhered to. Again, the way the ladder was placed is not the way it should have been placed. So here there was a lot of training, really, for the management of the school, because many of these things they didn't know about the type of ladder, the way the ladder should be placed against the wall, and then all of those things. So, of course, here it was clear that it's maintenance staff who are mostly at danger, and they were falling, they had fractures, and landing equipment, purchasing of additional ladders as a short-term measure to increase the number of workers able to perform the task and reduce time of exposure to the risk. So also, another way, and I think it came up earlier, we also have, we also look at the time of exposure as a risk. So for example, if I get on a boda to move from one part of town to another part, and I'm on the boda for 20 minutes, and then you compare my risk to that of the boda rider who is on the boda the whole day for hours and hours and hours. So you see, the fact that he's exposed to the risk all day, and I'm exposed to the risk just for a part of the day, a short part of the day, makes his risk much higher than mine. So That's another thing that we look at, and that's where we were talking. At this particular school, they told us they had only one ladder, right? And so it meant that the exposure was too long. Someone would be up on the ladder cleaning all the windows. So we were saying, is it possible to hire maybe a couple more staff, have 3 cleaners, or get somebody else who does another job and let them do this as well? But also, can you buy more ladders? So that instead of one person being on a ladder for 1 week every day for 5 hours, you spread it out. And the risk is reduced to some degree by having more staff and more ladders. They spend less time in that risky position. Again, we gave some different timelines. You see, for example, 1 month for providing fall arrest equipment, but 6 months to buy more ladders, because that's a budget implication. Continue. Then we had slips and trips and falls. These ones we mostly got reports and also observed. Classroom blocks, the dormitory blocks are all double-storied and all have metal staircases. So we found that there's a time we went and it was raining, and the staircases, because they are metal, they became very, very slippery in the rain. So a lot of children would slip and fall on the stairs because of that. There was also emergency evacuation was a bit of a problem because of the way these steps were. Imagine you're trying to retrieve someone from a building that is on fire, or and the access is already itself a bit risky, and that was a problem. And then there were no caution signs. You'll see sometimes when you go to different workplaces that when there's cleaning in process or construction in process, the signs were there. There were no signs at any place, and yet the school had some construction going on. There were very, very, actually there was no signs at all, not very rarely. Again, this is mostly knowledge, and then some engineering measures, maybe change the surface of the stairs, introduce a new surface, but all these can be looked in, and I don't want to go too much into detail. The idea of sharing this was just to give you an idea of what is covered in the risk assessment, how it's done, what information is captured, and how that information is used to determine timelines for remedy action and responsibility, and understanding what is in place and what can be done to do better. So we also had, we looked at fire. This is a boarding school, remember. I think you know we've had several fires. Again, another thing that has been in our papers, in our news for a while, and it's becoming more and more frequent, is fires in schools. So some of the things that we saw during our assessment, the emergency exits were not marked, and there were not enough emergency exits, especially in the dormitories. And one of the exits did not meet the required width of 1,050 millimeters. Yeah. So we have to remember that for many of these things, the laws are in place. Remember when we started this morning, the laws are in place, the regulations are in place, the policies are in place, indeed the standards are in place. This figure hasn't come from nowhere. It's actually best practice. There is a certain width of of what an emergency exit should be. An emergency exit, if it's a tiny little door, is not going to be helpful at all, especially when you're dealing with a number of people all trying to get out of a dormitory and their children, but the same for adults. Anytime you have that kind of rush of people, I think we've seen it even in some of our entertainment places in Uganda, I think in Kampala, where you have, stampede. Everyone is trying to get out and they don't have space to get out properly. So that was a big finding. And actually all of these for fire were very high risk because it's a school. And also the consequences. These are children, they're vulnerable, so they act slower. So if a disaster was to happen, the fatality would be very, very high. So with the fire at schools, this is always a priority. The level is high, that it's possible, and the consequences are very, very high. So this would definitely be a priority, and you'll see that the months, they are very, very short, the timeline, because it is a priority. In other matrices, we also categorize further and have coded. So red is high priority, orange, and then green. So there are different formats, obviously, but this is just one I'm sharing today. The other thing in terms of fire, so there were no exits are not marked. The width of exits is not good enough. The stairways were also very, very narrow, and yet all the borders were on storied buildings. So that also causes a huge problem. The only exit that was designated as a fire exit was in the boys' dormitory. This was a school for both male and female, and this particular one exit, which was the only one, remember, that was designated, and it was also partially blocked. It was blocked by some building materials. So what is the point of having an emergency exit and then it's blocked? So that if people are trying to run out, you first have to get very, very strong group to carry those boxes and equipment. So I think obviously there the issues are, the school had fire management experts. They'd actually conducted a survey in 2009. The recommendations were implemented, including type of PPE, numbers and positioning. The assembly point is known. And but unfortunately, many of these things, after this fire assessment was done, within a year, they stopped implementing. They stopped doing fire drills. So I think the last time they had done a fire drill was about 5 years prior. So where they'd started very well, and this is where we're talking about the commitment at the highest level. Because if the highest level management doesn't insist on doing these things, the others will not do them, will not follow through. So we found that 8 or 12 gas cylinders. They also have a very big kitchen. Only 8 of 12 were contained. The others were not contained. They had open fire, and the gas cylinders were right there. So there were a lot of fire hazards, a lot of them. So we provided a few recommendations and the timeline, and you'll see that some of the persons responsible, we went up to the chairman of the board of directors of the school. It had to go beyond the headmaster or the principal, right? And that's what is required sometimes to get a safety culture. It has to start at the very highest level. And also because the board often decides on how to allocate the monies, it's important that they're also brought in at some point. So for the fire, you see the board chairman is scattered across the responsible people because the hazard was high, the risk was high. The risk was very high, as was the likelihood and the consequences. So let's move. That's another. Okay, I think pretty much I'll just go through some of these. There were no emergencies, there was no evacuation plan, and no one knew about it. When I was told by one person that there was a plan, when I asked all the staff, all the students, nobody knew it. No fire drills in 3 years. Extinguishers were initially in all sections, but they had not been serviced, and some of them were expired or no longer available. None of the students or the dormitory staff knew how to use any of the fire equipment, and so on and so forth. So I think in the interest of time, I've pretty much shared, I think, enough to just share with you the depth of a risk assessment for any of your businesses, whatever it may be, and that it's a critical document and tool for management of occupational health and safety. Thank you very much, and we can have a few questions. Thank you.
Welcome back from that session. We might not have very many questions, but we have like only one concern here, and it's about risk assessment. It's about risk assessment. It goes, what steps should be taken if a risk cannot be eliminated but only minimized? And can a one-size-fits-all approach work for risk assessment, or must they always be customized? Those are the only questions.
Okay. Can we go back to that slide which had the hierarchy of controls, the image? So, in terms of if a risk cannot be eliminated, then we look at 4 other ways that we can mitigate the risk, so control the risk. And so we failed to eliminate it. Can we substitute it? Can we, instead of using this chemical for this process in the lab, which we found out is toxic to humans, can we source for another chemical that is not toxic but can do the same job? So we failed to eliminate. That's the next thing we do. We look at how to substitute. If we cannot substitute, then we look at engineering controls. So in this case, the chemical, it has to be used. So what engineering controls can we bring on board? Can we design a lab where the fumes of this chemical are contained? Is there another way we can do it? Furthermore, we can also bring in administrative controls. Make sure people are trained. Make sure that there's very strict supervision when people are handling that chemical. And also provide the staff with personal protective equipment. So make sure they have their masks, make sure they have their gloves, make sure they've got everything they need. If you remember with COVID, we could not eliminate it immediately. It was there, we couldn't substitute. So we started trying to figure out the other 3. Can we isolate? Right? And so we isolated one. So sorry. And which we did. Remember, we started putting our COVID patients in special rooms. And then we had administrative controls. There were clear signs. Remember, stay 2 meters apart. Don't sit next to this person. Wash your hands. All those are administrative controls. And then finally, do you remember our doctors were wearing, what are what are those outfits called? The full PPE, head to toe, right? I've forgotten what the name of them. But so yes, there is going to be times where we cannot eliminate the risk or the hazard. Then we can do the other 4. And we can never fail to apply some of the 4, if not all 4, to any event. The other question was, what was the other question?
The other question was about, it was, let me see here. The steps to be taken if a risk cannot be eliminated.
That's the one I've answered.
The follow-up was the follow-up question was
so the hierarchy.
Can a one-size-fits-all approach?
Oh yes, yes. Yeah. So unfortunately, no, one-size-fits-all cannot apply to a risk assessment. The process is one-size-fits-all. The steps you take is the same all through. But because the findings are going to be different, what you then report will always be different and might even require additional information or less. But in terms of the process, the steps, the observation, the consultation, the looking at chemical or materials data sheets, information and guidelines, all of those are the same. One size fits all up to that point. And then the way you then present the information will vary because the hazards will be different for every business and the mitigations will be different because the level of risk and the severity and the cost of whatever controls are found to be useful will always change depending on the business and the size of the operation.
Okay, thanks for this lecture. For our viewers who have been here with us since Monday, we thank you for following. We thank you for being here with us. We thank you for sparing your time to learn. We also thank CNOC Uganda for sponsoring this engagement and Vectra Energy for the implementation of the engagement. The CNOC Online Enterprise Development Program happens every year, and we promise that it will continue happening every year. As long as CNOC is here, this program will always be here. For those that have missed following live, you can always revisit Vectra Energy YouTube channel. All these engagements will be there for you to just go there and take notes. Since Monday, we've been having a number of consultants, and we thank them for being here, for always coming around to make sure that Ugandans benefit from these engagements. Ugandans have learned a lot, and I'm sure today, as we end, they have picked something, and their businesses will be better. They have learned Like today we have learned about health and safety. There is a lot that you people have picked. This information does not only help for people who are in business, but for sure today, even people who are on the road, like the drivers have benefited, like the people out there in construction have benefited. So it's not always about business, but it is information that has been for everyone. So on behalf of Vectra Energy, I say thank you for being here with us. For those that are following this, let's meet again on Friday next week in Hoima, as we will be having the physical engagement. We thank you. Vectra Energy says thank you. Let's meet again in the next episode.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend the night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend the night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in the Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend the night. Then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba in about 3 days. Then they would come from Malaba to Mukono, spend the night, then early morning we would set off from Mukono to Hoima.
We have employed Ugandans, so that's a good way of appreciating and saying yes, it is possible that we Ugandans, we can be involved in this oil and gas, and we perform excellently.
A rig is a group of equipment that we assemble, we test, and then we commission or operationalize to help us dig the wells, have them under control, have them completed, and get them ready for the production phase.
We have built capacity to handle equipment from the ship up to the last mile in a Kingfisher.
The convoys have been in the range of 15 to 20 trucks and driving all the way from Mombasa to Malaba